All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As I was introduced, my name is Larry Spilker. I'm with Campbell Risk Management, and uh, we administer a national program that ensures farmers markets and also ensures vendors across the country from coast to coast. We've been doing this for about 14 years now. I think we're in our 14th year and focused specifically on small producers that are either already involved or are initially getting involved in vending at farmers markets. And we were approached about 14 years ago by the Extension Office of the Department of Agriculture that was putting together a farmers market association. And we were asked if we could put together a program that was specific to ensuring vendors that were wanting to participate in events like farmers markets, festivals, fairs, craft shows, that sort of thing, but specifically in the farmers market space. Because found it, there were the vendors that were getting into it at the time when the cottage laws were just getting through, were either having trouble finding coverage at all. They were getting declined or spending weeks filling out applications and asking questions and so forth. And in the end, when they finally, the agents would get back with them, either they would be declined altogether or they would be approved, but with a cost that was actually cost prohibitive from allowing them to participate in the market. So that's where we kind of stepped in and helped put this together. And with the support of the National Farmers Market Coalition, the Department of Agriculture, the various New York Farmers Market Federation, and other organizations around the country, we were able to get this platform launched and available to vendors around the country. So as a vendor, the question's often asked, why do I need to have insurance, and what's that all about? So farmers markets themselves, they have their own policy that covers them for their own operational exposures. If they put a sign in the ground that says market open today from 8 till noon and it blows away and damages somebody's car, or they have an information tent set up and they're directing people on where your vendor booth is, and that canopy blows away and injures somebody, though, that's their operational exposure, and that's what they're covering under the farmers market policy that they have for the market itself. The most of the markets that you participate in, the market doesn't actually own the land that they're on. They're leasing the land, or they're being allowed to use the land, and the landowner requires that the market have their own insurance policy, and that the market take their insurance policy that they have and list the landowner as an additional insured. So if the landowner allows them to use the property and they get sued because of something that occurred because of the market's operation, they would be covered under the market's policy as an additional insured. So it's kind of like, when you think about it, kind of like a mall setup. There's common areas throughout a regular mall, and there's various stores that are set up. The mall has their insurance policies for themselves that kind of cover the common areas. But once a customer steps into a store, it is no longer the market's responsibility, and it's the liability of that store. So from a farmer's market standpoint, you as a vendor would be taking the place. You would be that store. The market would be the mall. You're the store. And the market is most likely going to require that you have your own insurance. So when you set up your canopy and your table, if something falls off your table and somebody slips and falls on it and breaks their leg in 3 places and turns around and sues you, where your canopy blows away and damages somebody's car, or somebody claimed they got sick or they got injured in some way from what they purchased from you, a foodborne illness, or they were injured, they got a splinter in their hand from your craft item that you had, or whatever their claim is, an allergic reaction to the soap or the lotion that you made. Those kinds of product liability issues are out there and come into play as well. And a policy like this will cover you for those kinds of exposures as well. I can tell you that 99.85% of all the claims that have come through in the last 14 years are all operationally related. It doesn't matter if you're selling birdhouses or if you're selling pies. Just being there in a public space is what is more likely to cause an issue, create a claim, cause an injury, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, in today's litigious society, it's if somebody slips and falls, they may be perfectly fine and walk away with a smile on their face, and you think everything's great. 2 weeks later, you're served with a legal notice from their attorney talking about the horrific injury that they had when they fell, tripped over the box, or your tent cord, or your tablecloth blew up and caught them between the legs and they fell down, whatever the case is. So operating in, regardless of whether you're selling $50 worth of stuff a week or you're selling $5,000 worth of stuff a week, the exposure is the same from being in that public environment. So it's not worth it to be there if you're not going to transfer that kind of risk over to some sort of insurance. That's kind of what the market insurance covers versus what the vendor insurance covers. Some markets you'll see in their vendor agreements that they have you sign that there is a hold harmless statement in there. That does not take place of insurance. You're agreeing to hold them harmless but you're the only one that's signing that hold harmless agreement. It's between you and the market. So if you personally were injured while you were there working at the market, your agreement that you agree to hold harmless works perfectly. But if a customer comes in there, they didn't sign a hold harmless agreement, so it doesn't really take the place of an insurance policy by signing that. It's more of an agreement between you and your booth and the market itself that you'll hold them harmless. That's the only thing really that stands up in a court type situation. So now, when you get an insurance policy that covers you, you're probably going to find, especially in New York, it's there's a lot of regulation and court stuff that goes on there. It gets pretty detailed. So when you look at your vendor agreements, regardless of whether you're operating in a farmer's market or a festival, in that agreement, it's most likely going to state that you have to have insurance and that you have to list the market as an additional insured third party. So if they get sued because you set up a canopy and it blew away and injured somebody, they're covered under your policy as an additional insured third party. That doesn't give them any rights to your insurance policy. It doesn't give them, any ability to change or cancel or do anything with your insurance. It's just as a third party, if they get drug into a lawsuit for something that they didn't have anything to do with, it was related to your space or your products, they're just covered as an additional insured. And that's pretty much the lay of the land when it comes to that. They're having to do it for the landowner, and you do that for them, and that kind of closes the exposure gaps, because attorneys have a nasty habit of suing everybody. If something happens, they're going to sue you, they're going to name the market, they're going to name the landowner, and maybe 3 or 4 stores up and down the street. I mean, it's crazy how many times they operate. So that certificate of insurance that they're asking for is what's up on the screen now. That's what it looks like. And whether you get insurance from here or you get insurance from someplace else, or you get insurance as a rider on your farm policy, or whatever the case is, this is the certificate of insurance that you're going to be asked to provide. And it's the name of the form is an Accord form. It's an Accord 25. It's a generic form that is accepted by every insurance company in the country. So all the insurance companies use this same form, so that there is some uniform to what's being presented to people that are asking for it. So regardless of whether you have insurance through Campbell Risk Management in Hanover, or whether it's from Farm Family or wherever it is, this is what that form is going to look like. And what they're asking for is that you're the named insured on the insurance form. When you buy a policy, you're the one that's, and this will be the name of whoever's actually leasing the space there at the farmer's market. They'll want that name to match with your insurance certificate status. It'll have your policy number and your effective and expiration dates. The markets just want to make sure that your policy is effective while you're there. So you get a policy, and normally the policies are good for 12 months. Most of the markets require a 1 million per occurrence limit with a $2 million aggregate limit. This particular certificate that's up there shows a 2 million per occurrence with a 4 million aggregate limit, and that's possible. You can do that. Some places do require higher limits. With our particular program, there's a $25 difference in cost between $1 million policy and a $2 million policy. So some people just opt to get the 2 million because for 25 bucks you're getting twice as much insurance. But what the per occurrence limit is, when you see that stated, that's what the market's requesting, or the venue that you're going to is requesting, the per occurrence limit is the most that your insurance policy will pay for any one specific claim. The aggregate limit is the most that your insurance will pay for any one policy year. So with a 1 million per occurrence and a $2 million aggregate limit, you could have two separate $1 million claims pay out before the policy limit was exhausted for the year, or any combination of claims. You could have $400,000 or $500,000 claims. So that's what that limit is about. The damage to premises rented limit is a fire limit that's specific to any one fire that you might cause. If it's damage for any reason other than fire, the full limit of the policy kicks in. But this is just a fire limit that you would cause by starting a fire and causing damage to somebody else's property. The medical expense limit, it says 5,000. That is not a limit that the policy will only pay $5,000 worth of medical expenses. The policy will pay out the full limit for medical expenses. You'll have $1 million worth of medical expenses, and the insurance company will pay it. That $5,000 med expense is more of a streamlined, somebody slips and falls and they have to go to the med check, and all they want is the insurance company just to pay their medical bills. And they're not looking for pain and suffering and loss of wages and all these other things that attorneys like to throw in. They just want to make sure that their medical expenses are covered. So the insurance company can very quickly, up to $5,000, approve paying for somebody's medical expenses only and be done with the claim. And it's a really streamlined process. If the medical expenses are over $5,000, it still gets paid if it's found that you were at fault. It just goes through a different type of claims process, a more extensive claims process for those expenses that are over $5,000. Okay, so On the certificate of insurance, that's your limits over here, and you'll see your policy effective and expiration date and your policy number. Down at the bottom, this is where you'll see the where the market wants to be listed as an additional insured. Down here at the bottom, it'll normally have the market's name and mailing address, and up above in the description box, it would state that the certificate holder is hereby an additional insured, and then the market's name and address is down there in that certificate holder box. Or it specifically says, you know, that the Rockford Farmers Market is an additional insured in that description box. So having their name and mailing address is kind of important. You want to know their name and mailing address. If you don't have their name and mailing address, call them and ask them, or shoot them an email. Give that to your insurance agent, or and you can they can stick that information in there that's needed to create the certificate that is going to satisfy the farmers market, so you can get on doing what you're doing. The program that we have through Campbell Risk Management is real streamlined. It's all done online. If you go to campbellriskmanagement.com, you just fill in a short form, you get a live price quote. If you're a small vendor, $1 million policy runs $285 for the year and covers you anywhere you want to go. And once you buy the policy, you can add the venue as an additional insured if you're required to do it. And there's no additional cost for that. So that's all done online. It's really quick, simple, and easy. If you have questions about it, if you can't find coverage elsewhere, or you don't already have coverage, that resource is available to you through campbellriskmanagement.com. So we kind of went over some of the common terms that are used. The aggregate limits, we've already talked about that. Deductible, that it's not present in most cases with liability insurance. So it pays from $1. It covers your cost of defense, whether you're found to be at fault or not. And believe me, that can happen. We had a vendor in New York that goes to the same market every week, and they're in the same spot consistently. And there was a week that the vendor couldn't go. There was some outstanding issues that made it so they weren't able to attend, and an injury occurred in the spot that they were normally at. The injured party hired an attorney. The attorney went to the farmers market. They looked at that spot where the injured person said that they were at, and they saw that there was that vendor that's there every week in the same spot. So they sued that vendor, and they weren't even there. So if you don't have a policy or something to cover you for that, you're going to be hiring an attorney to cover your cost of defense, and you weren't even at the market that day. So anyway, that was an interesting one. The insurance, though, covers your cost of defense whether you're found to be at fault or not. There's no out-of-pocket expense. There are a few companies out there I've seen in that play in the vendor space that have like $1,000 deductible, that sort of thing for liability. Most places do not. Usually deductibles fall into trying to cover property. If you have an auto claim, or you know, you would find a deductible with your auto insurance, but you're not going to find it for your liability part. Okay, additional insured, kind of went over that already. A rider. So what is a rider? A rider is just basically a modification or addition to an existing policy that you have. So if you have a farm policy, for example, already, you can talk to your farm folks, the people that insure your farm, and say, hey, I'm going to leave and go off premises. I'm going to leave my farm, and I'm going to go set up at a farmer's market. Can you cover that, or can you add a rider onto my policy that would add that kind of coverage to what I already have? And if so, how much is that? So that's a possibility that you could do that, as long as you want to make sure that you talk to the insurance agent for the farm, that they can provide that Accord 25 insurance certificate listing the market as an additional insured for commercial liability as well as product liability. They can do that, and they can do that as a rider and make that happen without you having to buy another policy. Or if the rider is $250 and the policy costs you $285 to buy a standalone policy, it makes sense. Save the $35 and go get a rider on your current policy. Hold harmless, we kind of talk about that. It only identifies the people that are signing that agreement is really what holds up in court. All right, so that kind of gets me through a broad overview. I'm sure it's clear as mud. So if anybody has any questions, and there's usually a lot of questions related to